Greetings, everyone. It's December the 1st, and just for fun, I'm going to get into this advent calendar and eat a piece of chocolate because, you know, that's the fun of it. So that's going to be fun. Chocolate. So, based on the thumbnail, this should actually give you a clue as to what I'm going to do for the interchangeable top for the ukulele. Anyway, so Eddie Van Halen is probably one of my favorite guitarists of all time, and I've been a fan for quite some time. And I always thought it would be kind of cool to do something neat with a ukulele that would kind of, in a way, just pay tribute to Ed. And one of the most iconic things, of course, is this guitar. So I'm going to come up with something for that. And anyway, just something kind of neat. You may recall in a previous video that I'd already made the template, so to speak, and I'm just going to look at some of the reference material in here because I'm going to use a picture from this magazine. Didn't really choose it beforehand, obviously. That's pretty close. Perhaps this one. I'm going to set that aside here so that I can kind of use it as a reference. So these are the templates that I made for the ukulele. This was pretty easy and fun to do. Save a little bit of time. I cut that out of red construction paper. Now originally what would have been done is Ed would have had an all black guitar and he would have taped it off. And then painted it white, pulled the tape away, and it would have got this design. And then at some point in the future he would have taped it again and painted it red, and that's where he would have come up with this design. So after you pull off all the tape, that's really the guitar that he ended up calling Frankie, as in he Frankensteined this thing together. So I'm going to set that over there for a moment. And although I have already test fit it, I'm going to try to figure out a couple of things here. Now it does fit pretty good. Now this isn't a maple neck, of course, so we're just going to make do with it. And again, it's just going to be a tribute guitar, or ukulele anyway. But I'm going to come up with a different design. You'll notice that I didn't actually cut the sound hole out. And there's a good reason for that. See here. We're going to just extend it to about, let's say, halfway over the sound hole. roughly. The other point is that we're not going to remove the strings. This is just for fun. All right. We can set this thing aside. We're going to see what we can come up with. Okay. We're going to extend the frets and we're just going to kind of rough them in. As far as the actual stripes, we're going to kind of do them in reverse order. Meaning, of course, we're starting with red, which would have been the last thing that he would have used. And then we'll put in the white stripes, and then we'll go with black stripes after. But right now I'm just doing this to get a rough idea of what I kind of want to see. Rough idea, like I said. Now, there would be, this is where I'd probably put the hole. The sound hole. So it's not going to be as big as the regular one. Plus, like I said, we're just roughing this in anyway. So the way that he probably, or most often I should say, would have done this would be that he didn't really use the center one. He would have had like a single coil here in most cases, and then sort of like a selector here, and then a double down here. Story goes that when he built this guitar, he didn't really have much money. He wasn't being sponsored by anybody. So he would have gone into, let's say, different places where they would be getting rid of guitars, and he would just kind of piece stuff together. So it was kind of like a necessity kind of thing that would have got him into innovating what he wanted, because he just wasn't able to go out and get what he wanted. So that's one of the stories. Now, I don't know if what I'm going to do is I don't know if I'm going to put the horns, as they're called, or just put the stripes on it and live with it. For now, I'll just put the stripes on it. So I'm just going to paint them in roughly. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to start with white anyway. See how far we get. Okay. Actually, might as well use some scrap paper. Don't get ink on, not ink, but anyway, you know where I'm going. We're just going to freehand paint it. Naturally, this would have been taped. And we're not going for precision here. Again, this is just a tribute. From what I remember, he was born in the Netherlands. I believe it was January 26th. It was his birthday, 1955. And we lost him back in 2020. And that would have been October the 6th. So he'd been like 65 years old. And I believe it was complications related to a stroke. And but he'd been sick a few times, cancer. I remember hearing a story where I think he thought, or he believed, that he developed cancer from holding a metal pick in his mouth. I don't know what that means, if that's true. It's possible, I suppose. I mean, if you have different frequencies running around through you. I think this paint is probably a little too thick. I don't like that at all. You're not getting the beautiful lines that, at least I'm not getting the beautiful lines. I'm not really putting a lot of patience, I suppose. I generally do have a lot of patience, but yeah, I don't know if I should have used a straight edge, maybe. That's all right. So yeah, when I was a kid, if you were to ask me, what were two of the most, I don't know, let's say, influential uh, music videos of my childhood, I probably would have said, oh, probably uh, Jump by Van Halen and Michael Jackson's Thriller. And of course, they ruled most of the 80s. There were lots of other bands, lots of other musical artists. But those two, for me anyway, they seem to mean a lot more. And it wasn't until many years later, looking back at the music videos of Michael Jackson, did I find out that Ed played guitar on Beat It. I mean, if you were ever to look at the album itself, he wasn't really credited, so you didn't really know. He's not in the music video. It's like, I don't know, some, I don't know what the kind of gangs they were. But they'd be brawling, and there'd be this wicked guitar solo that just kind of comes out of nowhere. And I remember thinking it sounds kind of familiar, like, oh, you know, somebody thinks they're Ed. Well, yeah, they probably did think they were Ed. It's weird when you look back at that kind of stuff. How much you relied on the albums to tell you what's going on. I've seen Van Halen in concert. I'm glad I got to do that. Kind of a big deal thing for me. Okay. Let's just say that taping this off would have been probably way easier. Wouldn't have done so great with the paper though. Would have been pretty torn up. This glue is thick. It dries really fast. I believe over the years you could buy replicas of his guitar, and if you were fortunate enough, you could buy one that he actually would have taped for you, and it would be a unique pattern and all that kind of stuff. That'd have been pretty cool. I mean, it's very much a signature thing. There have been other people that have kind of taped their guitars, but we all know Ed is kind of the one. Let's see. It's funny. There's a few instruments that I think would be neat to have. I don't know how many people ended up with one of those custom guitars, and if they play them or they keep it as some sort of, like, I don't know, wall ornament or something like that. Like, it would be a playable guitar. It'd be kind of sad to not actually play it. At least I think so. That's if you play the guitar anyway. I would have thought that taking my time doing this would be as much fun. Let's go with one, let's say, kind of through here. And again, we're not going for precision. We just know that to whom this is attributed to, which is kind of the point. Oh, you know what would have been a nice touch, I suppose. So I just used white tape. Wow, that'd have been a nice, okay, well, maybe the next one. Honestly, though, I think it would be fun to have, let's say, use a piece of vinyl to do this. And then, let's say, tape that off. That'd have been pretty cool. I remember sitting around with some people when I was a kid, and I was trying to learn the guitar. And someone said, oh, you got to listen to this. And they played a little bit of this tune called Spanish Fly. And it's played on an acoustic, tuned halfway down, but I mean, I didn't know that. And I thought to myself, why do I even bother? Like, why should I even bother to learn to play the guitar? You know, you just throw the guitar in the corner or whatever and just like, yep, nope, somebody's already done this. It is unnecessary to even try. But no, you shouldn't give up just because you're not able to play at a certain level. It's kind of like that with art in general as well. You might be disappointed that you may never reach the same level as Leonardo da Vinci or whomever. And you know what? You're not really meant to. I think the truth of it is you're supposed to reach whatever level you're supposed to be. And if you have to try to get to someone else's level, you're kind of missing the point. Because I think, honestly, you have to be involved in the process yourself. And if you're going to compare yourself to someone else, well, what's the point? You compare yourself to where you once were. That is probably the best thing. Chances are you will improve. Now, where would I like to go next? I keep filling up the cap. That's funny. Ed, just because I truly believe he innovated out of necessity. I think there's a good chance that so much of what he came up with was because he didn't have the means by which to get like special effects. So he figured out how to do certain things on his own. So that would be like pinch harmonics, and you know, he eventually came up with his own sound, which was nicknamed Brown Sound. There's lots of reasons for that one, apparently. It's still kind of neat, though. We're just putting stripes out here like we're having the time of our lives. There we are. Now there's some debate on who was the best singer, or the best, I guess you'd say, frontman in the band. There's different camps, but I'll say this much. A live show, I don't think you can beat it. So whichever one you manage to see live, that's probably the one. And if you saw each one of them live, well then lucky you, I guess. So officially there would be three. You'd have David Lee Roth, Diamond Dave. You'd have Sammy Hagar, in that era, you know, sometimes referred to as the Van Hagar era, which is kind of wacky. And then you'd have like, let me think, Gary Sharon, and he's amazing. But of all of them, he was probably the only one who was more interested in just being part of the band. I don't think he was really, like, he didn't really have that attitude that you kind of expect with lead singers. Like, I mean, I'd almost say that he would have been the best suited for just not making waves. I think Dave would go out of his way to be controversial. And I love Dave. I somehow made a smudge here, but we're not that worried about it. Not that worried about it. Perhaps I'll scrape it with something in a little bit. Or not. We'll live with it. Because that's what cool cats like us do. That's what cool cats like us do. Now, let's try doing this a little bit up here. We're going to have to add more paint to the lid of this. Now, I've seen a few concerts over the years, and I'm glad I got to see certain performers. Somebody that I've always wanted to see, but I never got a chance. You know, and as of right now, there's still time. I think Stevie Wonder would be pretty cool. He's been around for a while, doing cool stuff. So that'd be pretty cool. I've seen Joe Satriani. I've seen Steve Vai. I've seen B.B. King. I've seen Guns N' Roses. Even Meatloaf. I saw Meatloaf in concert years and years ago. He wasn't the headliner of the show. Actually, it was Def Leppard. And I went with a few friends. And it was wild. I don't know if the guys from Def Leppard had seen Meatloaf in concert before, but they were all on the side of the stage too, because it was just like, it was amazing, I guess you could say. Like, everybody in the crowd was like, who is this guy? What is he doing? It was probably one of the most amazing things. It was like, what a great showman that guy was. So yeah, no, I'm glad I got to see Meatloaf in concert. That was pretty cool. this turned out to be a little bit more involved than I thought it was going to be. When I had the original idea to just sit down and do this, I was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to paint streaks on this. I didn't test anything to see how thick the paint was. Like, wow. I really thought this was just going to be super smooth. Instead, it's like I'm painting with toothpaste. This is wild. And because it's so thick, in certain spots, I guess I'm kind of warping the paper just a little bit, but that's part of the fun. And of course, that's my fault. Let's go from here to here. Yeah. Something that I'm glad to see is his son is continuing to make music. It's a weird thing, you know. You know, if you have a famous relative, it's like there's kind of a shadow, but not really a shadow. Like, I think to some of us we might consider it a shadow, but the truth is, if you know the person that you call dad, or well, you don't think of it as a shadow. You think of, this is just someone that I was there with, and you cherish those kind of things, right? So it's not the same as how you and I might look at that relationship. And when you have to think that, wow, you know, you have to, in some ways, share who that person is with other people, that's got to be weird. Like, for example, at the beginning of the video, you heard me say where Eddie Van Halen was born and when he was born. Well, how weird is that? That somebody who's never met him, I mean, yeah, you can look stuff up, but like, you know, we're not hanging out. We're not getting together and chatting about stuff, even to wish him a happy birthday. That wasn't happening. So that's kind of a funny thing. I've never met Ed or Alex or any of the band. It's funny. There's a few people that in some ways I like to call them my uncles, just because they're not really that much older than me. My uncles on my mother's side, they're not really that much older than me either. So like, I can say that I've spent thousands of hours listening to music. And in that way, you feel like you're kind of a part of something. Not really, but kind of. You know, when the new album comes out, you go out and you buy it. So, you want to hear the latest from Uncle Ed. Let's see what Uncle Dave is up to. Although I have an Uncle David, he's a pretty cool dude too. Now we're just adding bonus little lines in. Nothing too outrageous. Let's add one right here. So as always, if you feel inspired to skip through the videos, please do. You can fast forward, get to the end a little quicker, or, you know, save the video for another time and then, I don't know, paint along with me. That's kind of what I'm aiming at anyway, is that if you want, you know how long the video is, well, hang out. We'll do some artsy stuff together. Let's go with something here, because I don't think we were using up this space down here very well. That's interesting, even though I'm not going to paint the sides of the ukulele. Just based on the picture here, it looks like you split the top and the bottom along the sides. So just ran a bit of tape. Well, that's not too bad. What I've come up with. Let's put something in here, because I think I remember something gets torn away in one version. As I said, we're doing this kind of reverse, being that the guitar would have been originally black. I almost feel like that could be enough colors. Let's put an X here. Now, I heard a story that when Dime, the guitarist for Pantera, at his funeral, that Ed showed up and wanted Dime to have one of his guitars. And he was buried with, I think they might have called it the Bumblebee guitar. It would have been like a black guitar with yellow stripes. And that he just put it in the coffin. And that's kind of cool. Like, you hear stories like that about Ed, that he would just kind of go out of his way and look after people and in fun ways. I mean, I believe he's hung out with Jason Becker, who is a phenomenal guitarist in his own right. He still writes music. He has ALS, but he still writes music. And he actually, well, Becker played with David Lee Roth and David Lee Roth's band sometime after Steve Vai was in that band too. I think that album was Little Ain't Enough or something like that. I think this is kind of the run of what I'm expecting out of this, time-wise as well, for a tribute. I may at some point come back around and tighten up the lines a little bit, and then maybe I'll laminate it as I go from one instrument to another, kind of a thing. But this is just a fun little exercise of sorts, so I'm going to wind down the white, because I think that's kind of where I want to go with that, if that makes sense. Let's clean up a couple of things. Then we'll put this away and we'll get out the black paint. We'll just do some little touch-ups of black and be done with that. How do I feel about this? You know what? Let's just do a couple more spots, because I feel like I could use a few more. I'm not on any sort of time limit. How about one right through here? And Ed has had strange relationships with different companies over the years. I think one of the longest ones that he held on to was like Peavey. And he made they made a vertical stack system for him. And I do believe that would have been part of like the 5150 line of things that he would have had as an endorsement. Which reminds me of another funny story. I heard a story that he would have thought it was funny to test out equipment. So, example, he would have been given like an amplifier and he'd just lock it in a room, like turn it up as high as it could go, lock it in a room, and see how long it would take to burn out. So at one time, I believe they were in the Guinness Book of World Records. I haven't looked up any of that stuff since, but they were the loudest band on the planet. It's kind of a funny bit of thing to be famous for, blowing out people's eardrums. But you get to hear fun stories like that. Like, I believe, what was another story that was kind of funny? That they had riders. Now, a rider is something that as a touring musician, you would have certain requests that would be made. I'm just going to rinse out this brush. And the purpose of the rider, in a lot of cases, was to ensure that whoever was looking after you at whatever venue, that they were taking your request seriously. At least that's the way some people treated them. So with Van Halen's rider, they would request a bowl of, I believe it was M&Ms, but there wasn't allowed to be any brown ones in it, which meant somebody had to pick through it. Not because they were going to eat it, it's just they wanted to make sure that something was taken serious. Anyway, sometimes you hear that people, they want like certain types of food available backstage and that kind of thing. Well, all right, now we're going to work with the black. And we'll see how smooth or not smooth this is. That's not bad. Now, in a previous video, you might have heard me talking about using black as an outline and how I used to use it in pretty much everything. Outline a picture of the sun. Anyway. So, in the guitar itself, as I said, this was the original color of the Frankenstein Strat. So anytime you see black on that guitar, it's all because it was just poking through. I'm being a little more sort of precise with this, mainly because, well, I feel like it. How about that? Anyway, I couldn't tell you what kind of tape he would have used. I assumed possibly automotive tape. But painter's tape, I'm sure, would have been, I mean, you wanted something that would come apart reasonably well. That's just what I think anyway. This is a little bit runnier than the white paint. I think we're going to kind of work our way down here and let that dry out down here a little bit. Splotch in some stuff here. splotching some stuff here. We're gonna splotching some stuff here. We're going to try to not ruin too many things about this. It's all right if we do, though. You know what would have probably been good is using a marker. Isn't that neat to just come up with different ideas while you're in the middle of something? Whatever. We are not worried about that. So, I don't know how many of you have found a ukulele that you could do this with. This could be a fun little project for you. I hope some of you have. I'm going to extend this just a little bit more. Yeah, I don't mind that. Now, I don't know if I should paint in the... Yeah, I don't know yet how I feel about certain things. Yeah, we're not there yet anyway. I think there would have been a lot of people that were kind of upset with Ed. I remember talking to somebody about if I thought, or something like that, if Ed was like classically trained as a musician. And I remember kind of thinking about it for a little bit, and I said, well, I think he was exposed to it, but I don't think he was classically trained. And I know that kind of made the person I was talking to kind of like look at me like I was a lunatic. And I'm thinking, well, I just always thought he did his own thing. Like, I don't know if I would have ever said, well, yeah, he sounds like this classical musician. Like, I just, yeah, I truly think he just kind of did his own thing. And that was just so unique. Beautiful, really. I mean, consider the two-hand technique of tapping. He wasn't the first person to do that. I mean, you'd see that in uh, Spanish music, for example, or even Alan Holdsworth would tap the guitar, but there was no one that did it like Ed. And then you'd have someone like Malmsteen show up, and there's somebody who I'd say was probably classically trained, but just a whole different person than Ed. And yeah, I wonder if there was like weird jealousy. Maybe not. I don't know, but that somebody was just doing stuff and was so different. I mean, like, I think so many people ended up copying Eddie, and I don't think he was doing anything maliciously. I think he just was that different. I don't know. It's a weird thing to sort of ramble on about. But just like absolutely remarkable. Anyway, I've always been a big fan of Ed. I'm trying to put down some reasonably dark lines here. Don't worry, we're not going to be that much longer. Not really. We wanted to put some care into this. And as I said, I'll probably come back to it, clean up the lines a little bit, laminate it, because I think that'd be kind of fun to do. Now, in my everyday life, I like to wear Chuck Taylors. And the interesting thing about Chucks is that, I used to skateboard. They're leather if you're lucky, but they're canvas if you just get the regular ones. Now, I have leather uppers, Chuck Taylors, and maybe I'll do like a weird video on those at some time, just because I think they're kind of fun. But yeah, no, so the canvas ones, I would dress them up. And I've done this pattern on those Chuck Taylors. So that's kind of fun. And of course, it wouldn't be exactly like this. It would have been whatever version I would have just come up with tape and whatever. But I think the first grouping of them, I would have painted them individually, painted the lines individually. Because you can't really tape off sneakers. But I tried. Sitting around with your buddies laughing about stuff. Yes, having the right paint makes a lot of difference. Now this is not superb, but it's way better than the white. Maybe the white needed some more water in it. These are just regular kind of acrylic paints. They're not super duper awesome. I mean, they're good enough, I suppose, but anyway. So if you get a chance, I want you to look up Wolfgang Van Halen, listen to some of the tunes, see some of that talent. Pretty talented dude. Try to remember that he's not living in a shadow. That's not ever been the case. Because, you know, when it's your dad, well, you don't live in your father's shadow. You know, you live in whatever version of love there is. You know, you and I might think it's a shadow, but it really is not. He'll always do his own thing. Like Jacob Dylan and the Wallflowers. Which is funny, you know, it's not actually his name. I mean, his dad's name is, anyway, I'm not going to ramble on too much about that, but it's really a stage name that, you know, you take on as your actual name. I think Meatloaf, for example, I think it was his legal name, although his real name was like Marvin Lee Aday, something like that. So that's funny. Just trying to think of what am I going to do with some of these lines. We're motoring along though here, folks. Yes. I'm a big fan of trying to figure out doing things in actual real time. So I'm not fast forwarding anything. I'm leaving that up to you if that's what you wish to do. Nothing wrong if you do. Now, where else do I want to put some extra stuff? I think originally I was going to try to finish up here, but I got out of we'll do what we can. So my plan is every once in a while I'm going to make another cover, and it's all going to be under the same playlist. So check back every once in a while, or watch some of the other videos or whatever. And yeah, you'll see other favorites of things that I would have thought was kind of neat, or other guitarists, and we'll make tributes to them. Well, I almost feel like that's kind of the run of it. This is where the pickguard, or part of the pickguard, would end up being with one version. I think I could just paint it in and then maybe cover it at some point. Yeah, let's paint it in. So let's go half the bridge, roughly. It was like broken. And then now, admittedly, I have kind of studied one version of this guitar, although not perfectly. I'm supposing that's kind of obvious. Yeah, I'm going to be ending up painting that mostly in that way. Let's say right about here. We'll fix that up after. So I'll probably get a piece of like cardboard and I'll cut it out. But I have some ideas anyway for other guitars. That I would tribute with a ukulele template. Come on now. Get some more paint. If I were so crafty, I would have. If I were so crafty. Well, what I was thinking just moments there, that it would have been kind of funny to have taken the time and made the little parts I already felt semi-conflicted cutting out this cardboard off camera, thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to save time. I mean, already we're at an hour and 16 minutes at this point, so really the 5 minutes that it took to trace and cut out this red wouldn't have made that big of a difference. But I promise you, it took me a moment or two to do, so that's hilarious. But yeah, it would have been kind of fun to make a couple of little parts for this thing. I was kind of shocked to see that pop figure. It's kind of cool, but I didn't really expect it. Yeah, I don't mind this. Well, now we're going to fill in these spots, the cavities. Inside this one, there would have been kind of like two single coils but wrapped up, you know, like almost like a humbucker, but it would have a pretty unique sound compared to a single coil, which some people will put those close to the butt end of the neck. Kind of depends on how you feel about certain things. You kind of pick up your own sound with how you want things to be amplified. Often you would probably end up using like an effects pedal anyway, so things might sound a little thinner or now in this one, this is where you would have put like a selector as far as how it would have been wired. It would depend on how you felt about certain things. If you want to get that or that pickup, you had to be crafty. I remember when I heard that he'd passed, I was pretty sad about that. And what made his passing super unusual was that he passed a little while after my own mother had passed away. And because I've only really been on social media, really just for the past 2 months, really since October, most people would get hold of me just by calling me or what have you, but a lot of people would actually came to get hold of me after Ed's passing. Which was kind of unusual. They knew that Ed meant something to me. Not as much as my mother, though. The fact is that, people didn't really know how to get a hold of me anyway. So, but they remembered anyway that I was a Van Halen fan. So lots of condolences in that regard. I found that to be kind of strange. Okay. So we're going to make like there's kind of a pickup in there. We're going to leave that border. We're almost done with what we're going to do. Now we're going to match up the fretboard with the other fretboard. As I said at the beginning, Ed's guitar would have been a maple or blonde, but basically a maple fretboard. And since the ukulele that I have, that I'm doing this for, it has a painted black fretboard, we're just going to let them match up. There's no point in letting it differentiate itself too much. More paint, and then we'll be pretty much done. Now I may just use like a think I have a silver marker. I'll just draw in some frets. So like a regular guitar, even though you can get guitars that have 24 frets, most often you see 22. It's kind of the standard thing, especially with like the Stratocaster styled guitars. You know, the kind of guitar that this one would have naturally been, or what Hendrix would have played, or Clapton would have played. Actually, a lot of people played a Strat styled Stevie Ray Vaughan. Okay, so now we'll just do a little bit of dressing. There might be a few things along the way that we could, you know, stress. Like, let's say I can do a little bit there. How about down here, because I feel like we're missing some stuff. I like it. Do a little bit in here too. Just to add some contrast. So I apologize if it seems like I'm rambling on a little bit too much, but what's that the kids say? Sorry, not sorry. I am sorry if if you're not into that, but talking out loud is fun. Well, I think that's all. That's all I'm going to do for now, anyway. And I like it. I can fill that in. Let's fix that router hole just a little bit. Okay. I think that's what I'll do for now. This quick rinse. Let it dry a little bit. Ooh, down here, I guess I could put 5150, because that's what he has here. Let's do that anyway, just for fun. I didn't perfectly plan on that, but we'll put it in there think. Should it overlap? The center should be off center. We're just going to rough it in. So this would have been stenciled on his many stage guitars. Of course, I'm not stenciling it. How cool of a legacy is it to have people all over the world sort of look up to you and go to your shows. Read the magazines. It's got to be kind of weird too. I think you may not really change a lot, and you just find that people around you change. But man, you might get some cool cars. No, I can imagine that's kind of a nuisance. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues with a lot of artists, truth be told, is when money gets involved. Then you end up with people that kind of take advantage of you. And that ain't no good. There's a few songs that sort of talk about the fame and fortune thing, like that. Life's been good so far. I think that paints a semi-accurate photo or picture of that lifestyle. I don't know if I'd ever really say that I wanted to be a rock star. There's certain trappings that just can't be good. As soon as we finish the 0, I'm going to say that this is done. We're getting there though. Perhaps I just lied. I have another idea. I set something aside just because I might as well do it as well. Give this a chance to dry just a little bit while I do one of the final things. Funny. Okay. That's pretty cool. Just because I said I would, I'm going to fill in this. So this will be one of my longest videos, which I could have been crafty enough to break it apart, I guess, but when you're doing stuff, it's hard to really keep track of the time. Maybe I'll do like a Spinal Tap thing here. Well, I'll have certain knobs I can go right up to 11. That'd be hilarious. Give it some ugly wiring there just for fun. Okay, so let's let this dry. Oh. Add just a little bit of split between there. Sure. Okay. Now the final thing that I was going to do, so I have this tape, which is meant for duct work, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something fun. You'll see in a moment. Need to add some detail if at all possible. Okay, so that's what I just cut out. And maybe we got, well, let's make it a little bit smaller. Not by much though. Okay. This type of stuff's pretty sticky. And we're going to put that right about here. Cool. Last thing. I think the rest of this would be pretty much dry. We are going to dress this just a little bit. This is where it would be pretty handy to have this thing laminated, because I have a feeling that this would wipe off pretty easy. Okay, now I'm done. Done for now anyway. Rinse the brush. Get rid of some of the junk that's around. Get rid of this. Set that there for a moment. You know, that kind of reminds me of something else. That's where, well, I was going to cut a sound hole into that. Do I actually have something that can do that nicely? I do have that pair of scissors, but I don't know how much I trust that. I thought I had something else. Okay, well, maybe I don't. Paper. Hilarious. Well, we'll deal with that after. So we're going to try this out on this guitar, or on this ukulele. That's kind of cool. So what I'll end up doing is I will cut out that sound hole. I'll probably use like a knife, and so maybe I'll paint some of that black, that way it all kind of looks like it's supposed to be there together. Yeah, no, I think that turned out all right. The edges, I may create some flaps and tape it down, and or just use like a silicone type glue, and that could be a neat thing. I think that's okay for what it is. All right. I'll have a more finished version of that at some point in the near future, where I'll just dress it up, and we'll see what we can come up with. Oh, pretty cool. All right, well, thanks for joining me. This is, I realize, of course, was a pretty long video, and yeah, I may just do a quick little demo at some point in the near future, just to show it all done. So thank you very much for joining me with this little tribute to Eddie Van Halen's Frankie guitar on a ukulele. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again at some point in the near future.